So, something we're working on in this chapter is graphing the derivative, and it's a real visual skill to be able to graph derivatives. And for some people it comes across kind of easily, and for others it takes a lot of work to kind of understand it. So, hopefully these videos will kind of help. So here's the concept. Let's draw on our first graph here a function that we're going to call f of x, and I'm going to write up here f of x. And let's do something really simple like a straight line. Here is my graph of f of x. Now, if I know the equation for the line, then this problem becomes even easier. Like, let's say I know f of x is equal to x. Just a straight y equals x line through the origin kind of a thing. Well, I want to graph the derivative on this next graph. I want to graph f prime of x. Well, pretty simple to do when you know the equation. If f of x equals x, then I can use the power rule and safely say, what is the derivative of x? Well, it's 1. So, the derivative is 1, therefore on the graph at 1, there must be a straight line going right through there. That is my graph of f prime of x. Pretty easy to do. What's hard is usually we don't get this extra information. We're not going to be told the function f of x and f prime of x. These two things. We won't be able to work with those. We won't have anything to power rule. So if we don't have those two things, instead what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at the slope of the graph. If I had picked 1, 2, 3 random points on the graph of f of x and said, well, what is the slope at point 1, at point 2 here, and at point 3? What you would probably do is look at it and say, well, it's a positive slope, it's going up. It's a positive slope, it's going up. It's a positive slope. So since all these slopes are positives, then you know that the graph over here needs to be positive, positive, and positive. Positive 1 in this case. So if that kind of confuses you, let's look at another graph and try a different way of reading this. So here is a new graph of f of x. This time I'm not going to know the equation. What I am going to know is I'm going to know that it looks kind of like this, a parabola. So here is my f of x graph. Now I want to graph over here the derivative f prime of x. So we're going to sketch ourselves a graph first by analyzing what f of x looks like. Now if I pick 3 random points or 4 random points, let's see, here's a random point, here's a random point, let's pick this one down at the bottom, let's pick one over here and over here. So I got 5 points in total. These 5 points all have different slopes. Think about drawing almost like a little tangent line next to each one of these. What you're going to be doing is calculating the slope of those tangent lines with the derivative over here. Well, I don't have an equation, so I'm not really sure what the slope at this point equals. I'd like to know. I'm not really sure what the slope at this point equals, but I'd like to know. So what I'm going to do is say, instead of equaling a question mark, I'm just going to think about, well, what kind of slope is it? Is it positive or negative? So like at this first point up here, I definitely see a positive slope right here. At this second point, I definitely see a positive slope. What kind of slope's down here at the bottom point? A slope of 0. What kind of slope is over here at this point? Well, looks like a slope that is equal to a negative. What kind of slope's at this top point? I'd say a slope that's equal to a negative. So I know this looks a little bit messy now, but my graph has negative slope, 0, positive slope, positive slope. So over on this side of the graph, when I graph my derivative, what I'm going to have to do is show that. So start with the 0 slope. That seems the easiest. The 0 slope happens down here at 0. So on my f prime graph, I need a point at 0, right at the origin. After that, I know that the left side of the graph over here is positive, or is negative slope, and this side is positive slope. So I need negative slope and I need positive slope. I'm going to get a graph that looks something like this, a straight line. This shows me that the numbers are down in the negatives and these are up in the positives. And that correlates to these slopes over here. It's a little messy on the iPad to show you this, but we're going to try a few, and the more we practice, the better you'll get. So let's make up a new graph of f of x. Let's say it looks something like, how about this? here is my f of x graph. We want to draw the derivative over here, and we're going to call it f prime of x. That's our goal. So we're going to base everything on slopes. I find that finding the zero slopes, the flat spots, is the easiest way to begin. There are two flat spots on this graph. One of them happens here, and one of them happens here. So I need numbers. There's no numbers on my graph, so I'm going to call this point A and point B. At A and B, we've got two flat spots. So over here, I'm going to go to A, and I'm going to go to B. And basically what I'm going to do is safely say that the slope was 0 at those two spots, so I need points at 0 on the axis. Now, in between all those points, I got to go look at what kind of slope is happening on this first part of the curve. Well, this is all positive slope. What kind of slope is happening in between here? Well, this is all negative slope. What kind of slope is happening on this last leg as it goes up? Well, that's all positive slope. So we have positive slope, negative slope, and positive slope. Positive, negative, positive, which means on the other side of the graph, on the f prime graph, we're going to be in the positive. There's your positive slope. Into the negative. Here's your negative slope, and back into the positive. And so I'm going to get this graph that kind of looks like a parabola, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit, since I did kind of make this messy. I'm going to make it a little nicer if I can. There we go. Here's my potential graph of f prime of x. So think about it. I had positive slope for this first portion, so the whole entire graph is in the positive values. I had negative slope for the second portion. Well, the whole entire graph is down in the negative. I had positive slope. The whole graph is up in the positive. So the slope of this function, f of x, helps me figure out the location on f prime of x. So let's try again. We have a new function called f of x. This time we're going to make the graph look something like this. How about? And we want to graph f prime of x over on this side. So we now know that the slope on this graph becomes the location on this graph. So where the slope is 0, the location is 0. So where's the slope 0? Well, somewhere up top up here. Probably right around there. Let's say that's at 1 on the graph. So I'm going to go over here to 1. And I know for sure that the slope was 0. So since the slope was 0, the location is going to be 0, which means I'm going to have a point right here at 1, 0. There's my point. Alright, so now that I got that on there, now I'm going to look at the slopes in between. Well, going back to the graph here a little bit, it looks like the first leg of this graph is all positive slope. And the second leg of this graph is all negative slope. So we're going to have something where we're going from positive to negative, which means I'm going to be in the positive location, so up in this area, and then in the negative location, down in this area. So I'm thinking maybe like a line that just like goes through, something like that, straight line. It's all in the positive location, then it's all in the negative location, matching these slopes. So why don't you try one now? I'm going to give you one to take an attempt on here. Let's say we have this as a graph. Oh, let's make it easier than that. How about we have this as a graph, and we'll call it f of x. Can you try and draw the derivative? Pause the video and actually try it. See if you can get the right answer. Alright, so you've paused the video. Hopefully you're unpausing the video now, and you have drawn a graph, and we're going to see if it's right. So we've got a flat spot here and a flat spot here. There's two flat spots on this graph. One of them's here, one of them's here. So I'm going to call that A and B on my graph. And I'm going to go over here to A and B. And I'm going to make sure that since those were the flat spots, those are the spots where I have points on the axis at 0. Then I'm going to interconnect these points. So I'm seeing that this graph over here has all negative slope for this first portion. Then it has all positive slope. and then it has more positive slope. So we're going to have a graph that goes negative, positive, positive. That's going to translate into location. So it's going to go negative, positive, positive. So here's the negative area. Here's the positive area. So I'm thinking I'm out in the negative. Got to get to A. Then I got to be from A to B over here. If you look at the graph from A to B, it's all positive. So from A to B, I'm here in the positive. And then I'm actually back in the positive again. So instead of going down below like this, I'm going to go more like this. And this will be my graph of f prime of x. Something like that. Alright, so we're going to keep practicing. I'll post more videos on this. I know it is not easy, but hopefully you're slowly getting the hang of it.